Triton Consulting is a leading provider of consultancy services in the information management industry. As an IBM Premier Business Partner, Triton is pleased to present the latest findings from an objective assessment of the complexity of several database administration tasks, comparing Oracle 11GR2 and IBM DB2 for LEW version 9.7. As staff costs continue to consume an ever-increasing proportion of IT budgets, productivity and ease of use are becoming more important factors in the overall total cost of ownership for any application. Thus, the degree of complexity associated with common DBA activities is indeed a key differentiator. Complexity is a measure of how difficult it is to perform a task, and it is evaluated by a new approach known as complexity analysis. Now, this methodology is used to quantify and illustrate the usability of specific tasks. This study examined 6 common DBA tasks. For each of these tasks, a complexity analysis was performed to provide a quantified metric that measures how difficult it is to perform the task. This chart shows the complexity measures for each of the 6 tasks that Triton Consulting evaluated. Blue bars represent DB2 complexity and red bars represent the complexity for Oracle Database. Note that the bigger the bar, the more complex the task. It is clear from this chart that DB2 is less complex than Oracle for each of these 6 tasks. In some cases, such as the first 2 tasks of installation and data compression, the complexity metric for DB2 is roughly half of the complexity of Oracle. For the other tasks, DB2 is an even smaller fraction of Oracle's complexity. Overall, this chart shows that DB2 is much easier to use for these 6 tasks. As shown, installations are far less complex when using DB2. Oracle database users are required to perform additional steps to set up the environment for install, thus adding a significant amount of complexity for the task. DB2's advantage in data compression can be attributed to several functional differences. For example, DB2 version 9.7 supports full XML compression, regardless of where the XML data is stored. In contrast, Oracle Database requires that XML data be stored externally to use compression, and this requires additional syntax for each column definition within the create table statement. Index compression for DB2 is included as part of the data compression task flow. This entirely avoids Oracle's manual index compression activities, such as selecting candidate indexes for prefix compression. The underlying difference for backup and recovery can be predominantly attributed to the amount of time spent in configuring the environment. DB2 Backup provides automated configuration for table spaces, backup devices, and parallel input-output capabilities. In contrast, Oracle Database backups are complicated in that they require an increased level of manual tuning to specify the number of parallel threads and backup devices. Configuring the memory-related database parameters is easier to execute using DB2 as opposed to Oracle Database. DB2 has a self-tuning memory manager component, while Oracle Database cannot be fully automated to perform this task. DB2's data access control advantage can be attributed to such functional differences as DB2 completing the task at the database level, whereas its Oracle Database counterpart requires the implementation of a virtual private database to control the data access. Based on the results of the Triton study, DB2 has a clear and overwhelming advantage over all 6 of the routine DBA activities. This DB2 complexity advantage translates into higher DBA productivity achieved through factors such as less DBA time spent on researching and performing these tasks, less time spent in training new staff, and a lower risk of errors that can impact quality of service. The distinction between these 2 products is clear. Please refer to the following links to access the Triton Task Complexity Analysis Report in its entirety, or also for other DB2 resources.